Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave, this is Olive, and we try to have a little fun while we talk about books and sometimes some other things to help spread the joy of reading. So today we're putting this up, it's a little late, but we're putting up week 3 wrap-up of Horror Mayhem. And again, if you don't know what we're talking about, Horror Mayhem is a reading event in the month of May, created by the Bookish Bryants, where we try to focus on reading short horror fiction. Mostly designed to help those that haven't already dipped their toes into it to give the genre a try. So we have been doing what we typically do, which is we try to read at least one book and supplement with some short stories each week. So this week we have a few things to talk to you about. All the co-hosts will be linked below. So we had a pretty good week, actually. So for the horror side of things, we read... Okay, so the first book we read is Queen of the Cicadas, or as is often said in the book, what is it? La Reina de las Chicharras. And this is by Violet Castro, who goes by V. Castro, and was published in 2021. It's a relatively new book. I've seen this book around, but haven't really seen anybody reviewing the book. I'm not sure why that is. But so this book was really good. Okay, so let me explain what it's about. So there's a couple little pieces. You need to pick me up, Ups. We just started. You can't be tapping out this early. So what this book is about is there's a couple different time periods. So it starts with this woman, what was her name, Berlinda, in modern day, and she goes to a wedding and she goes to this wedding at this house, and there, when she's there, she encounters she discovers that this place was actually the location of a very violent crime that had happened decades before that. And this was a myth that she had heard about as a child. So you see a little bit of that too, but when she was a child and she was being told this myth by, I think it was her friend's grandmother. But most of it takes place in these two time periods of Berlinda today, and was it Melinda? Berlinda, I think. Anyway, of her today and the actual crime that happened decades before that. I think it was the 1950s. And what that crime was there was a woman, Milagros, who had come up from her village in Mexico and to go work on a farm or plantation in Texas. And while she was there, she was just trying to there was some controversy in her own town that she was trying to escape from, and unfortunately it ended up worse for her. And when she was up here, she suffered a horrendous hate crime. And what happened to her gave birth to this legend about her. And this book was really good. So you alternately follow what happened to Milagros and those around her back then, and mostly what's happening today to our main character as she, along with some help, is exploring whatever happened to Milagros and trying to get some justice for her, or just some even just like some recognition for what happened to her. And so, of course, she gets more and more intertwined with this because her own culture is getting wrapped up in this, and she's just oddly compelled to further investigate this horrific event that happened and the mythology that came out of that. And what a good story. It had like a number of different pieces to it. Some of it was just like a little bit of, the mystery, and not too much of a mystery, but just trying to figure out what happened. But you see a lot from, it's a lot of this is a story about, the birth and growth of mythology, and how legends are created, and how the individuals behind those legends, which maybe aren't just myth, how they come to be, and almost a little bit of a story about the rise and falls of religion. It got really cool towards the end, I thought, and it's really, I really liked the way it ended, and not just the ending, like the last quarter of the book. I thought was really cool, and it was written really well. The prose was great. It was one of those ones where I this would be a great book to tab along as you're going, because there's a bunch of great little quotes in there. I mean, it was really great prose. So I hadn't heard too much of, even though I knew of this book, I hadn't heard too much about it. I think it's a smaller press, Flame Tree Press, but I don't know why I didn't hear more about it, because it was so good. I mean, I would peg this as a 5-star read. I mean, it was a really good book, and I'm surprised it's not more well known. And and it's not that long, so it's very easy read. And yeah, so I mean, I would highly recommend this book. It did get, I mean, it was definitely horror, because there was there was some violence in there, and then there was some creepy things happening. I don't want to give too much away, but with the queen of the cicadas, and I'm not going to give more away, but there's a couple different individuals, let's just call them that, and so there's some creepy scenes, but there was so much more to this book. There was so much more to it, and the way it was, exploring mythology and religion, and you had this mystery going on, and such beautiful prose, and it was a great book. There was an awful lot packed into a book that was not that long, so highly recommend that one. Second book that we read. So like I said, we had a good month. We had a good week. We had started this a little bit before that, but this is Another Kind of Devil by N.B. Clarke. So this is it's a cool but interesting cover, and you eventually, towards the end, find out why it's got that cover. For most of it, doesn't make sense why it has that cover, but. So this is an independently published book that was published just recently in 2023. So it's not, it doesn't come, when I was looking for it on Amazon, I either had to, it didn't come up unless I filtered for books, so I'm going to be putting the direct link below in the description in case you're interested. So this was an unusual book. I had a good time with it, but it was a very different kind of story. So basically, you start out, you meet this devil, Scaramucci, and who later becomes Sam. But Sam or Scaramucci is originally a devil in hell that is in charge of one of the particular pits, right? But he's very not content, and just really like sick of the boring same old life, that nothing ever changes, and so he's just always at this pit, like throwing sinners in the pit. And so something happens, and he meets somebody, and there's not a spoiler, happens early, so he escapes and goes to Earth, and basically starts this process of learning about Earth, and learning to become a human on Earth. Now, most of the story is not actually have to do with that. Like so there's some of it early on where he's like learning he doesn't really understand Earth, so he has to learn some basic things and learn learn about humans and animals, and because now he is living that life. But that dissipates relatively quickly. And he meets some other people. He meets this woman, Ophelia, who's a very central character in. And it's hard for me to say too much about the people without giving things away, but it kind of transitions from this story about the devil early in the book that wants to escape hell and go experience earth, and then turns more of just like a violent horror suspense, and so the book was there was room for these different parts to it, because the book, it's not really horror mayhem material because it was a little bit longer. This book was clocked in at 277 pages, but it was longer than that because, as you can see, they're long pages, and there's no chapter breaks. So this book doesn't have, one of the few things I didn't really like about the book was it didn't have chapters. Instead, it had 4 mega chapters. So it was really like 4 sections. So no chapter breaks, and I kind of like I like chapters. I like short chapters in particular. I like to be able to like have these like feel like you got these little bite-sized snacks you can just keep chomping on. And so there was one chapter break. So it's a little bit longer than that. It's a full size novel. So getting back to what I was saying about the different parts. So the story kind of felt like it was finding its footing a little bit in the beginning. Like originally it started out kind of like a horror commentary, like a horror comedy, because there were like some funny parts like in the beginning with our Scaramucci interacting with some of these sinners there. But the comedy kind of pretty much disappeared once he went to Earth. Shortly after he got to Earth, pretty much disappeared, and it turned more into like a Richard Lehman novel. Like more like there was just like this violent suspense, kind of action. It was good. It was good. I mean, I like stories like that, and it was good. So I liked the kind of horror comedy in the beginning. And then I liked the more sort of, violent, tense suspense story that followed. If you like those kind of story, if you like a story like a horror layman novel, that's what it was like. It was pretty good, and it was, it was kind of like almost like a Dexter feel, and so it was pretty good. And so, but like I said, that it was almost like that first piece about hell kind of just dropped out of the story. It does everything ends up all being connected and ties back in. And so, but it was like this genre mashup, this story of like horror comedy, Richard Lehman, violent thrill ride, and like little like supernatural, little mystical supernatural stuff. And so it was a little, it felt like a little disjointed in that way, but that was okay. It worked. I mean, it was appropriately, the book was appropriately long to fit all that in, and I enjoyed all those pieces. So it was good. It was a good book. It was very different. Like I said, this is her first book, M.B. Clarke's first book that she's published. I'd be interested to see if she comes out with more, because this, like I said, this was a fun ride. It's not like the best book of the year, you know what I mean? But it was a fun story in the same way that a Richard Lehman book is a fun thrill ride, with a little extra comedy thrown in there. So yeah, it was a fun ride. I'm glad we read it. Okay, and then, as I said, we've been supplementing with short stories, but we did a bit of novel reading, so we didn't do much in terms of short stories. We only read one. And as we mentioned before, the previous weeks, one of the books that we've been working out of is Stephen King's Night Shift. And so this time we just read one story. This was called Night Surf, and this was published in Cavalier magazine in August 1974. So this is another one of those, almost all these stories were like in Cavalier or Playboy. So, and originally. And so, but anyway, so Night Surf, I have to say I didn't really like the story. I didn't really get the point of the story. It was a short one, and it was about these group of young friends, and an apocalypse has happened. There's this, what was it called? A26 or something like that. Anyway, some like super flu thing had like killed off most people, and not really much happened. They like go to the beach, and finds, I mean, I guess I can't spoil the only thing that happens, but not really much happens. It's just it's kind of like you're just given the setting right from the beginning that there was this virus that killed everybody, and then they're just talking and hanging out on the beach. I guess it was about how these kids treat each other. So I didn't really enjoy it all that much, actually. So that was the first one we read out of here so far that we didn't think was great. I don't know if other people like that story. Let me know and what you liked about the story, because I found it to be kind of a dud. So, all right, so that was the three things that we read. Queen of the Cicadas by V. Castro, Another Kind of Devil by N.B. Clarke, and the story out of Night Shift by Stephen King. So yeah, we had a good time. These two weren't two novels that we read. They weren't planned. They weren't on our original TBR. They just kind of came up, which sometimes happens. But as I said last time, if we can stay 3/4 of the way with our TBR for the month, then we are doing good. That's good for us. We also read some poetry this month. I didn't bring those books over here, but we read some poetry because we did our PAX special, which was poetry based, and so we read some from some Gareth Howell's book, N.B. Hunt's book, Namiria's book. Read a little Robert Frost and a little Poe. So yeah, we managed to squeeze in some poetry along the way as well. So pretty good week for us. So it looks like we're coming up on our last week. I was hoping we were going to divide this up into 5 weeks in May, because technically you get 5 weeks out of it, but it looks like we're just going to do the 4 because we're late with this one. So, and we're anxious to move on to some other things after Horror Mayhem, even though we are having a great time with it. So, as always, thanks. Did you have anything further on these books? No? Nothing else to add? Nothing else to add? And so, if you read any of these, definitely not just Night Surf, if you read any of these, we'd be interested to hear your thoughts, or if you're planning to read them. And let us know, as always, what you are reading. We're curious to hear what other people are reading for this event if you're partaking. So, thanks so much for watching. You can always leave Olive a puppy emoji because she always likes to see those. And we'll see you again very soon. We won't go this long for the next video, I promise. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.